So the first time I ever spent the night with my father. When I was a little girl, my obviously my mother and my father split up. It was seven of us, if you don't know that. It was seven of us, five girls and two boys, but my sisters were living with other people in the family. My two brothers and myself, we lived with my mother in the projects. At a time, my mother said the only reason I ended up staying with her was because I grabbed a hold of her leg and wouldn't let go. And so when my other sisters were leaving to go to live with other people in the family, she told them, y'all just go ahead. I'll keep Nene, and y'all can come back and get Nene tomorrow. Just let me deal with her today and I'll get her straight and y'all can come back and get her tomorrow. Well, thank God tomorrow never came, honey. Anyway, my sisters went on off and I ended up staying with my mother and my two brothers. And my mother had before we had one project when all of my siblings except my baby sister, because she's always lived with my grandmother, my mother's mother. But the rest of us, the other six of us, we stayed with my mother. She had another project, and that project had more bedrooms. But when all of us girls were supposed to have left to go live with other people in the family, a great a big idea that my aunt and my grandmother got together and came up with, and then asked my mother, would she agree to it, and apparently obviously my mother did. We ended up moving to a two-bedroom project. And because I wasn't supposed to be there. So it was my mother's bedroom. It was supposed to be my mother's bedroom. And then my two brothers were supposed to share the bedroom. But because I was still there and wouldn't let go of my mama's leg, thank you, Jesus. Um, because I was there, my mother put three beds in the bedroom. The boys had bunk beds, and then I had one bed over to the side and my own little space, or whatever. So we'll get into that another time. So here I am, with my mother, and my first time, well, with my mother, and then ended up going to stay with my grandmother, my father's mother. And I stayed with her for a few years. I know there were times when I went back and forth because my grandmother, she didn't live far from my mother. She lived walking distance from my mother, about a couple of miles or so from my mother. I do remember going back and forth sometimes at my mother's house, but primarily I was at my grandmother's. So one weekend, my grandmother had to go out of town. And she asked my dad to keep me for whatever reason. I don't know why I didn't go and just go to my mother's house. But for whatever reason, my grandmother asked my father, would he keep me? And I'm gonna tell you something. I really consider myself blessed in a lot of ways because I was the one of my mother's daughters who had a relationship with everybody because I was the traveling child. I went and I would spend the night with my sisters at my aunt's house. And I wasn't spending the night with my sisters. I was spending the night with my favorite cousins, but my sisters lived there. Two of my sisters lived there, so I spent the night with them. Then I would go to my grandmother's house every weekend, so that I could go to church. And so I got to spend the night and have a relationship with my sister and my baby sister. And then I would go sometimes over to see my other sister, who lived with my aunt's in-laws. So I got to stay with her. And then, of course, my two brothers were with mom. So I was all over the place, y'all. So my grandmother went out of town, and I had my little bag packed and everything, y'all, and with my little teeny stuff, because I was real teeny. They even called me Teen Tiny Mama. That was one of my nicknames. So I would go. This was and it feels so good to share this story because it was the only time I ever stayed with my father overnight. This story, if I get a little weird or a little emotional, please forgive me. But anyway, so I go to my father's house, his little apartment, nice apartment. He had it set up nice. My father was a very handsome man, just as my mother was a pretty woman. But my father was a very handsome man. He was just a handsome man. If I think about it, I'll post the picture up here of him. But he was an artist. He ain't worked nowhere, y'all, not even in a fashion shop. But he was an artist. I mean, he had a few jobs later on in life, but nothing to account for him to be able to get a Social Security check. So, so I go to my father's house, and I never forget. This lady came over there, and I was just standing, playing with whatever I was playing with, my toys or whatever. Little knock come at the door. Excuse me, y'all. Little knock come at the door, and so this beautiful lady is standing there, and I'm looking up at this beautiful lady who's got all this nice perfume on, nails done, eyebrow, just, oh, she's just beautiful. Because my mother was a plain woman. My mother never wore makeup. She didn't wear lipstick. My mother, and I'll post a picture of her as well, she didn't wear lipstick or anything. My mother was a teeny woman. I think my mother probably stood 5'2", and right now I'm only 5 feet. So she was just a teeny woman. So anyway, so I'm looking up at this big statue of a woman who smells really, really good, and has this really lovely voice. And my dad, he had this real nice masculine voice that handsome men have. He had a handsome man's voice. So anyway, my dad, of course, invited her in, and she came on in, and I played with my toys over there in the corner, watched TV while him and her were drinking, listening to music, all the oldies and everything. And I remember him saying, well, baby, because my dad had this, nay, he would call me like, nay. And I said, yeah, dad, hey, baby. That's how my dad was, child. Don't get me to blushing. So anyway, I heard him say to her, now, you can't stay tonight because my daughter here, and I, whatever, I just bits and pieces I can remember. And I remember her leaving. And when she left, my dad told me to, it was time for me to get ready for bed or whatever. I think I had to no, back up, Renee. I had already had to go to bed, and him and her were whatever, spending time together, whatever, but I wasn't obviously asleep. So my dad, he came and he got in the bed, and y'all, let me tell you, that was the warmest, most safest feeling I ever had in my life. And I remember my dad taking his big old leg and throwing it over me, and that was just the safest feeling I ever had in my life. Thanks for listening, y'all. Have an amazing day.